Greetings. My name is Maria Coyne, and I am the President and CEO of the UCC Cornerstone Fund, where our mission is joining together in faith to invest in and build community. We have the privilege of working with churches throughout the country on issues that help them improve their real property to deliver ministry and strengthen the communities in which they reside. I'd like to introduce you to Cornerstone Fund's Chief Lending Officer, Janine Caloza, who will kick off our webinar today. Thanks very much.
Good afternoon. Like Maria said, I'm Janine Caloza. I'm the Chief Lending Officer. And like you, we, over the past 2 years, most of the religious community has been talking about or dealing with some type of virtual or online worship. And we at the Cornerstone Fund have been watching and reading and much about equipment and platforms and Facebook and hybrid. During the pandemic, we continued to receive loan applications, but really not much for technology. Then all of a sudden, I would say late last summer, we started to get a couple of applications trickling in and requests for technology improvements. Some for technology, mostly with consultants doing some work for folks. And they were mostly coming from the East Coast and the South, but they were definitely trickling in, not huge loans, kind of small, and maybe some electrical upgrades. And we could talk more later about how some of the different products that we use for those. But I was reviewing their applications from some of these folks, and I just wanted to read some of their requests on the application only because, and I think as we'll talk today, it's such a varied approach and strategy from each church. And I think it has also really kind of morphed as we've gone through the past 2 years. But here's just a couple of comments from the application. This project will allow us to have interactive hybrid worship, including worshipers online rather than just offering them a live stream of the service. From another church, during the pandemic, we were forced to expand the way that we share our ministry. We gained some new support from people that were not local and now have support from many cities and many states. Live streaming will allow us to maintain these relationships. So one was like, we want to expand from that, and the other folks are just kind of coming into it. And the last one was we have added members during the pandemic who have never set foot in our building, and we have welcomed friends and family from distant places to our online worship. Hybrid worship is part of our expansion into the digital world as we look for ways to engage our church community and the wider community through social media and other avenues. So I just kind of wanted to point those out because I thought they were really indicative of what we're seeing. There's no one answer, there's no one strategy. And so I want to thank the panelists that we have today, and I will introduce them. And the reason we came to this panel, this webinar, is as we started to see these applications, I started reaching out to conference ministers or other contacts that we had and said, this is what we're seeing, who do you suggest we talk to? And the folks who are here are the folks that said, you really need to talk to these people. They've really done it well, or they've done something different, and they can really add a lot of wealth to this conversation. So let me begin. This discussion will be moderated by the Reverend Eric Ellie, who's here. We are actually co-branding this webinar with the Southern New England Conference, of which he is a part. He worked for the SNEUCC. So he has been instrumental in coming up with a lot of the comments and questions that we'll talk about today. He will moderate, and we also have Kenneth Crawford, a trustee from New Emmanuel Church, also a borrower of Cornerstone Fund, and they borrowed for technology purposes. We have the Reverend Thad Winkle, the pastor of Bethel Bethany in Milwaukee, as well as Rich Pine, also with Bethel Bethany, a tech specialist. And lastly, but not least, we have Kevin Williams, Director of Welcome for Westfield Congregational Church, Killingly, Connecticut. And with that, let me turn it over to Eric.
Thank you so much, Janine. I have been blessed for the last year and a half to serve as the digital minister of the Southern New England Conference of the United Church of Christ. And in that time, I've had the opportunity to encourage and support a wide variety of digital ministries. as Janina said, among our conference's congregations. So I'm delighted that the Southern New England Conference is a digital ministry resource partner with the Cornerstone Fund, and I thank the Cornerstone staff for organizing our webinar and inviting me to moderate this afternoon's discussion. So as you might expect, the pandemic turbocharged the adoption of digital ministries among churches that had not had pursued digital before, and encourage others to grow their pre-existing ministries, taking both either situation to the next level and to new places where the congregation had never been before. So whether you find your congregation on the digital ministry spectrum, we hope that you'll find a conversation that we have today helpful. We have a wealth of knowledge and experience among our guests today, and I'm feeling confident that you're in the right place. So now that much of society is reopening with reduced or even no COVID restrictions, including many of our churches, some of us may wonder if we still need to place so much emphasis on digital ministry. So worry not, digital is here to stay. Even if a new COVID variant doesn't rear its ugly head, or the situation, I may add, even in Europe, doesn't destabilize even further, we pray that both do not. Digital is here to stay, not only as we know it as in our faith life, but also in education, employment, and commerce. So our work as a church in witness and worship, in formation and fellowship, all these aspects of our church life together constitute digital, and they are in lockstep with in-person gatherings. So I know we've touched on this before, but with all that we said, I'm going to reiterate, there is no single piece of audio or video equipment that serves as the perfect solution in all environments. Each worshiping community is different, with varying budgets, building design, staffing, and technical ability. And it is for this reason that this is not a webinar of one, but rather multiple voices with different experiences. So as we figure that, and as we acknowledge all that, our first question that we have today is, as our sanctuaries reopen, some of our churches report declining digital participation as people return to church. So the question posed for our panelists is, how does your church integrate and retain the digital-only participants into the life of your community?
Well, this is Ken. I'll go first.
Thank you.
Actually, we've had the opposite effect. We've been open for about 3 weeks. The digital experience with live streaming is so much better than Zoom. We're trying to get people to get off the couch and come back into the church. So we've had kind of the opposite effect. Our hybrid service has been limited in the sanctuary. Again, this is only the 3rd week, but we have pretty good participation with the live stream platform.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ken.
And Kevin Williams, I'll jump in. So at Westfield, we also have been, blessed with a really strong and supportive congregation throughout the pandemic, and now as we transition into whatever the next normal is. One of the things we can get caught up on are those numbers, and we look at the analytics across whatever streaming platforms we're on, and we start looking at numbers that are a fraction of where they were. We've chosen to look at things a little bit differently. First of all, you need to, if you want to look at your numbers, look at them combined. How many did you have in person? How many did you have digitally? That is your collective audience. But don't do it just on Sunday, 30 minutes after your worship concludes. Wait and check it, say midweek, because what you're going to find is that there are a number of people that we're serving for whom your normal slot, be it a Saturday, a Sunday, whatever, is not meshing with work schedules. It's not meshing with family obligations. We are still reaching those people. We are still spreading amazing news to those people any day, any hour of the week. So don't get too caught up on what those numbers are. Like I said, a half hour after you're done with your live stream, check it out a little later on, because you're going to find you're serving a lot more people than you think you are.
Thank you, Kevin.
I would add in, echoing what Kevin was saying, that I think we've chosen to look at it in terms of the cumulative numbers that, of course, some of the digital folks have gone down because they're coming in person. But I think we were more worried that all of a sudden there were only going to be 3 or 4 people online, and are they going to feel lonely now? But that really hasn't been the case. We've continued to have enough of a critical mass that it continues to be a meaningful experience for people who are coming virtually. And I think that, we probably connect with people more often. Like some people who maybe would come in person twice a month might also come online once a month now. And so there sort of is a constant group that's always there, and then an evolving group. So it sort of is, I think, in some ways its own little community, and people, most people gather for us on Zoom. And so people get to see each other and things like that too. But we haven't seen a drastic decrease since returning to in-person.
Thank you, Thad.
I wanted to ask, we've been back in church 3 weeks now, so I don't think we have a large enough sample size. How long have you guys been back in the sanctuary?
We started back in person last summer sometime. Rich, do you remember the actual date?
It was the end of May, I believe.
Okay, end of May. And then we went through December 31. And then, we actually did a couple Sundays in January, but because of the Omicron variant, we ended up pulling back and doing 6 weeks or 7 weeks virtually only. And now we're 2 weeks back in again, in person and online.
Okay.
Yeah, we at Westfield are kind of the same. We were back in person for a bit in 2021. And then we hit, I think it was was the Sunday after Thanksgiving, we went back to remote only due to where Omicron had launched our numbers, and had stayed that way until about 3 weeks ago. And we started gathering back in person. And now we're having those additional conversations, right? I mean, you've got discussions happening around mask requirements. We currently still require our folks to be masked in the sanctuary, mainly due to ventilation restrictions of a building as old as it is. So again, from a digital perspective, if we are serving 3 people, or if we are serving 5 people, we're serving those people who are the least of these. We're serving those people who are not there in many cases because they just do not feel comfortable yet being in in-person environments with larger gatherings during, in our case, colder weather months where windows need to be shut and things like that. So that ministry is just as important.
Eric, if I could just add one other thing. I was thinking about the question you were asking initially about retaining some of these digital worshipers, and it's super small, but one thing that I am intentional about every week is acknowledging that some of us are gathered here in person and some of us are here virtually, and we give thanks for the ways that we're all connected in Christ's spirit, or whatever sort of language flows out of me that morning. And then during the passing of the peacetime as well, we try to encourage people to wave at the camera as a way of, again, trying to, decrease some of those barriers. And I don't know exactly what the effect is, but it's at least an attempt at reminding us that this is a wider community than just who's in the room or just who's on the screen.
Great point.
Exactly.
We literally did the same thing where we have everybody turn and look at the specific camera they need to face and wave and exchange the passing of the peace with people virtually who are not there in person as well.
And I would add that it's also important for the worship leaders to have digital in the forefront of their mind. So one of the things that we'd like to do at St. Mark's in East Longmeadow, if you know any type of Episcopalian, You know that Episcopalians like to do liturgical calisthenics. So it's, it's kneel and stand, that sort of thing. And so what I'll do, or Pastor Sandy will do, on occasion, we'll be like, okay, we invite you to rise. And then we'll add like, unless you're driving your car, because that would be a bad idea if you did it then, or wherever, and the setting will keep changing. But we keep a dialogue open. So it's important to keep the dialogue open live, which is hard to do when you have folks in person and digitally, and you have the dynamics of a room in front of you. But we try to keep that. We try to keep it open. We've been in person. So again, we opened up last fall. And then for Omicron, we relocked, and now we're reopening again. So, Richard, did you want to add anything to the conversation?
Well, yeah, Thad covered mostly for our church. I do know one of the other churches in Wisconsin, they actually, when they went virtual, it was very, basically an iPhone and streaming on Facebook, but they actually had a larger attendance virtually than they ever had in person, because they had a lot of older people who, especially in the wintertime, couldn't get out. So they were really glad about that. They've since upgraded to a camera system and so forth. But they were really pleased actually to see their attendance grow when they were virtual.
Right. And I would add, even there was one church in the conference, in the Southern New England Conference, that actually went as far as to welcome a digital-only participant from Chicago to serve on Deacons Board. So they they really take that to heart, and it's really good to hear those stories. Any other comments? Any other questions?
Well, one thing we got after we were using Zoom, before we went back into the church, we did pick up some members that we're in North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. So we've had some regular participation from Florida, from New York, from West Virginia, and some of them are family members of our pastor. Some are just members that maybe attended church with him at another church, but we wanted to make sure that they were included. And most of them have been with us pretty much since we went out of the church because of the virus. So our main goal was to make sure that they remained a part of us when we went back in. One of the things that we got to work on, the live stream platform that we use, with Zoom, you could be on a telephone. If you didn't have a digital presence like a smartphone, you could listen in on the telephone. So we're in the process of working on, and some of those participants that are home that are sick and shut in, and our congregation is a bit older as well. So we're looking at getting tablets to them and giving them assistance in being able to participate in the digital environment that we're in now.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, another question. How much money has your church invested in digital? So what have been the large areas of expense? What were the surprises along the way? And on the staffing side, how many hours per week does your church invest in digital in total?
I guess it's a bit of a loaded question, Eric, because at what point in time do we start saying we started investing in digital and so forth? But realistically, for this wave that we've all been a part of, look, we started out, our first live stream was with my personal iPhone, a 10-year-old MacBook Pro that I had available from my house, and a single USB mic that we tried to place close enough to the piano and the pastor so you could hear both at the same time. Since then, we've probably invested roughly $10,000 in across the board in terms of the equipment. We are now up to 2 remote pan tilt zoom cameras plus a static camcorder for other shots. we're running through separate soundboards. So the in-house PA board feeds just the in-house, and we have a separate dedicated soundboard for the live stream. A used but relatively newer live stream computer monitors, extra monitors so that you have bigger screens and more real estate to have stuff spread out. Atom Pro Mini camera switcher to toggle between the cameras, some higher grade Sennheiser mics that we've brought in, both boom mics and regular, pulpit mics and so forth, to improve the audio. So we spent a lot in those areas. Obviously, cabling, wiring, which is, I think, the hardest part of the whole process for those of us in these older legacy buildings. How are you going to run not just your Ethernet internet cable that you need run, but in our case, we used SDI video cables so we could cover longer distances with a video signal from the cameras. So we had to figure out how are we going to run that, but hide it so that it didn't look ugly. So those types of things were probably more challenging. The reality is you're going to find budgets all over the place. That's where we landed and where we've approached things. But we also know that if we had to go back to the most basics, we're fine. Sound over video. We focused on the sound first because you can have crystal clear audio and static on your screen visually, and people will stay with you. If you have 4K video, but your audio is wonky or staticky or drops, people will drop in seconds.
So true. Anybody else? Thank you, Kevin.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kenneth.
We were pre-pandemic. We were already looking at getting a new audio system. We were pretty much outdated. So we had quotes there somewhere around $18,000 to $19,000 just getting a whole new audio system. But then we wanted to search for a company that could do both audio and video. So we found a company locally that could do both. We quoted about 3 different companies. They were the only ones that were able to do everything and integrate everything for us. We had to add a T1 cable line in the sanctuary. Initially, our mixing board was up behind the choir stand with the musicians, but now we added 2 cameras, we added a switching device, but we ran everything to the back wall of the church, and there was a room behind it, a choir room, that we were able to set up, install a monitor on the wall rather than having to cut a window in the wall. We installed a monitor on the wall, which gave us access to seeing everything in the sanctuary. So when we added the video piece of it, we probably, added another 12,000 or so, because we did, initially we were gonna do it up near the choir area, but we decided to move it all out. So we have both audio and video back in the room that's just outside the sanctuary. And it's worked out well for us. But you are so right. The biggest challenge was making sure that the sound was okay. But the company that we used, they came in, set up everything for us, did some training with us, programmed everything. And the system that we use has a unique feature where everything that they've engineered and set up, if somehow we get it all mixed up, we can hit one button and recall their original setups. And that has been a game changer for us. We're a smaller congregation. We don't have a lot of technical people. So we've gotten to the point now where this will be our 3rd Sunday of in-person worship. So we're getting there. It's been fun, but it's a challenge learning the equipment and getting everybody used to doing what they're supposed to do. Because in our church, the the acoustics are pretty good, but when you're live streaming, you really need to be singing into the microphones. So that's something new for us because it sounds great in the sanctuary, but if you're not singing in the camera, they're not getting the same experience from the live feed at home. So it's been pretty good the last couple of weeks.
Interesting.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, when we started that, I think we did a quick scramble. We bought a used conference camera off of eBay and a digital audio adapter. So we spent, I think, $200 to get off the ground. Loaded up.
This was my like pride of the pandemic, was we got a camera before they all just disappeared. Yeah.
Yeah. So $200 to get off. We reused an old laptop and loaded up some evaluation software. vMix is what we used. And then once because we figured, 2, 3, maybe 3 months tops would be doing this. But as it rolled on, we started to see some of the shortcomings of what we had. And we ended up probably investing another $2,400. Part of it was we put 2 TV monitors up in the front of the church. We got a new PC dedicated strictly to the streaming service so that we could actually not have lousy video. The sound was okay, but the video was having a tough time. We had to license the software because we were using vMix software. We went with the medium package for about $400. So I'd say, starting with $200, and we probably did another $2,400 over the coming year to bring it up. We're still the single camera. We're still using that old USB conference room camera, single camera solution. It works.
Thank you, Richard. I think one thing that that should be mentioned is that when you reach out to contractors just like us, we all have experiences. We all come into audio and video through either audio or video or IT. We always have a path. So sometimes when you call contractors to come out and do assessment, they'll be stronger in one, and you can sense this. Perhaps they'll be stronger in one dimension of digital and not in the other. They will, I'm sure they will do a fine job, and realize that some companies, like a local company that it comes to mind immediately is ATC in Springfield, in West Springfield, Massachusetts, started out as an audio company. So you always keep that in the back of your mind. And yes, sound is, have great sound. If you have great video, but kind of mediocre sound, the engagement, people tend to disengage faster. So pretty good. Thank you so much. Another example, another prompt. My spouse's church has a separate digital ministry studio right here. Okay. And is contemplating, though, converting an unused Sunday school area into a larger digital studio. So my question is, what non-sanctuary based, what non-Sunday, because we mostly think of, of digital ministry being on Sunday morning, what ministry do you have in your context that you do apart from Sunday? And what else would you like to see happen in digital ministry? Apart from the Sunday service?
Well, I think we're gonna grow and expand as we get more comfortable with the new situation with live streaming and such. But Bible study is one thing that we can do from a digital platform. Wednesday night praise and worship. There's a lot of different things that we can do. We want to get comfortable first and get to where we feel like everything's going pretty smoothly, and then go to the next step. For instance, I don't know if you guys are using any kind of church software along with your digital, what you've done from a digital standpoint. We purchased ProPresenter. I don't know if anybody else uses that or not. And I had no idea about ProPresenter. And when you look at the number of people that we have, we really don't have very many technical people at our church. So my wife and myself and a couple other guys have gotten together to do the best that we can, but we're getting there now. One thing we did do also, we installed a couple of 82-inch TV monitors in the sanctuary. So with Pro Presenter, we can put up the scriptures, we can, do a number of things there. But yeah, we're using a different room. Kind of the sky's the limit, but we're limited right now. Even pre-pandemic, on average, we'd have 65, 70 people in church. So now, if a good portion of those people say they like looking at the digital platform, we got to see how it's going to work out with attendance versus digital.
Thank you, Kenneth. Any other ministries that folks are engaged in apart from Sunday worship?
So for us, I mean, first of all, our Sunday live stream room space itself is a separate control room outside of the sanctuary. We had a spot off the balcony that was being used for storage that we converted into a control room. So we're used to working with our audio and video in a non-sanctuary space. But in addition to that, I'd say the thing that we've done that I think we've been pretty creative at is we've done a lot more think film production or television production type work. So our favorite example is Christmas Eve 2 years ago. We launched a Very Westfield Christmas. Think if you took the old Andy Williams Christmas specials and mashed them up with Prairie Home Companion, and you'd have what we published. It was, we take what we do seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. And so we produced a roughly half-hour, theologically faithful Christmas Eve event that families could watch together. And it was so popular that people basically requested that we re-air it last year. So we did. And this may become a annual tradition of the re-airing of this ridiculous half-hour special as another way to deliver ministry.
Thank you, Kevin.
I would just add, ours is pretty basic and simple. The only real things outside of Sundays would be any other kind of meetings that we do. So we did add in a Tuesday and Thursday morning prayer and check-in time. It's usually like 20 minutes long. But it was recognizing that with some of the HIPAA stuff at first, we weren't comfortable sharing people's personal prayer requests in the church service setting. So this was a way for people who wanted to be aware of in praying for people in our church that we could talk a little bit more specifically about some of the needs, and then have continue to do Bible studies and things like that on Zoom as well.
Thank you, Thad. Okay. Along those lines, and I know this has come up a couple times, what platforms do you stream your digital content, and why do you use those platforms? So basically the platform is the destination that you're streaming to, and also what hardware are you using to get there?
I'll let Rich speak for us.
Okay. We're doing Facebook, Zoom, and we're also streaming to YouTube, although we're not really publicizing that. Again, I think we started with Zoom. I'm not sure why we started with Zoom, Thad, but we did.
Mostly because of the option for people to call in by phone, that it was,
right.
we felt it was the most accessible if people weren't comfortable with the internet accessibility stuff.
Yeah. So we did that in Facebook. That chose Facebook as the other platform to stream to. And originally we had Zoom feed Facebook because that's an option within Zoom. But Zoom was having a lot of problems at the beginning doing that because so many people were turning to it so quickly. So we started, since we were using the vMix software on a PC, vMix gives you the opportunity to stream it to 3 different platforms. Plus, we could feed it into Zoom directly. So we did that. And now we've got a stronger PC. We're feeding YouTube, Facebook out of vMix, and then it's taking a feed over to Zoom directly as well.
Thank
At
you.
Westfield, we opted not to go with Zoom. We were average Sunday attendance about 175 before the pandemic, and just were concerned that it could get to be really complicated managing muted, unmuted lines. A lot of people trying to speak over each other. You cannot sync audio that way, so it's impossible. You do not want people singing on Zoom collectively. Cacophony of sound. So we opted to just focus on a broadcast style delivery of our content. We currently stream to Facebook Live, to YouTube, and to our website. We use a contact distribution network called StreamSpot. So we send one feed that goes to StreamSpot and they redistribute to those 3 platforms. We're using OBS Studio as our software, free. A little bit of a learning curve, but once you got it, you can do a whole lot with it as our distribution method to get our content out.
Cool. Thank you, Kevin.
Well, we chose to use YouTube as the platform. With the equipment that we have, we could either live stream to YouTube or Facebook. But Facebook, we could only stream 720p. So we chose YouTube because our cameras are capable of 1080p. We wanted to get the most out of the cameras. So that's what we're using. But we're using the Hilo system streaming unit and with a switcher. And I'm not real technical, but we have the AJA Hilo streaming unit with recording. We can record to SD or USB. And of course, with YouTube, you can record it right on YouTube and have it there available for viewing during the service or going back and looking at it at any time during the week. So that's what we're using.
Cool. Thank you. At St. Mark's, we don't have much money. We have we haven't graduated to PTZ cameras yet. We have 2 stationary cameras mounted on tripods that feed vMix, and from vMix we stream simultaneously out to Facebook and YouTube. Yes, Thad.
I was just going to add in a little clarification. So we use Zoom, and that's the primary place where most people gather, but we do not actually use it as an interactive platform. So we don't have people on Zoom contributing to the service. They're just viewing it on Zoom. And we actually take away the possibility for people to unmute themselves because of the concerns mentioned. And then afterwards, we do let it run and people can stay and visit with each other or whatever. For a while, we did breakout rooms for fellowship, but that was one little clarification. When we say we're using Zoom, it's not really a conversation much. It is sort of a broadcast with Zoom as the viewing platform.
Thank you.
Eric,
Thank you
can
for
I
that
jump in
clarification.
real quick with one question? In our earlier discussions, and someone had brought it up here a little bit, we had talked about you had brought up some really interesting ways about how you staff this process, right? So a lot of what we've heard from folks were, yes, we have some, we hired somebody, or we've got a, really, technologically savvy, person in the congregation. But you had brought up some different approaches that I thought were worth mentioning. And I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say. Some of it had to do with like the local community college or high school AV. And so could you speak to that just a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, sure. At St. Mark's in East Longmeadow, we are 100% volunteer. We have about a staff of 6. That may seem like a lot, but it's actually 6 new people since the pandemic began. What we decided. What the priest decided at St. Mark's was a good idea to roll forward in the early days of lockdown, was to go from one Sunday service to a morning prayer, midday prayer, and compline or evening prayer service 3 times a day, 5 days a week. And we promptly burned out every volunteer staff person. Since that we've pulled that back. We have approximately, like I said, about six folks who are in rotation. So everyone, the same person doesn't have to serve every Sunday during the month. So there is some rotation on and off. At my husband's church, all the staff that run the live streaming are high school age. Manny, I believe, is 16 years old, and Ryan is 15. And that's just been the culture of my husband's church here in the Congregational Church of Somersville. There's not a youth group, so the youth group it is the digital team, of course. To that end, my husband pays his staff $20 per Sunday. There have been churches in the Southern New England Conference that have reached out to their local community colleges and local high schools for folks who need community service hours or need internships. That has worked out well for a variety of our churches in the Southern New England Conference. And I'm sure it has for yours too. But I pause on that and let others speak to that.
I think we're up to 4 volunteers that run ours on Sundays, and it's a handful because it's the sound, it's the Zoom, it's the display up on front, and it's also the feeding of the signal out to Facebook and so forth. So, but yeah, we started with me, and then my wife promptly said, "You got to find somebody else also." So we've grown it, but I know there's some churches that actually there's services you can contract where they install the cameras, hook it up to your sound system, and then it's actually run for someplace else. Right. Your folks don't even do it. It's done centrally from another location. So I've been with a church that has done that as well. So there are all kind of options that are available out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. I was just going to say some good information because we need to go out for some volunteers. Right now, it's myself and a gentleman, Mr. Nordstrom, and neither one of us are that technically savvy. So we could use some young people helping us out. That's a pretty good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in our case, it started as me. I was the one who knew enough to be dangerous. So we have always had a setup that could be run by one person. Cameras are operated remotely, soundboard controls the balance of the audio coming from different sources. All of the changes of graphics are done from the streaming software. So you're sitting in one control room running everything. It's myself. I have one backup. Something to look for, by the way, the backup that we have works for our town, where our church is based. And she is part of the crew that does the live stream for their Board of Selectmen meetings, for their Board of Education meetings. And they happen to be using the same software that we use. So you will look for the people who are already doing live streams for other environments in your community. They may be willing to help out and volunteer for you as well.
Right. And that brings up a good point, Kevin. So prior to myself answering the call to serve as the digital minister in the Southern New England Conference, I was an independent subcontractor who would consult with churches. And in the Episcopal Church, which I'm ordained, we have things called deaneries, which are associations. And our association got together, all the clergy and all the tech folks early on, and said, okay, let's pretend that this is not going to last 2 months or 3 months. Let's think that this may last a little longer. Can we all agree on one camera, one set of software, whatever it is, and so that way, if there's an event or someone can't make it, folks can serve at different churches. That has helped out a lot. And one of the things that also helped out, and this speaks to what Kevin was saying about having simul streams, as well as Thad and Rich with vMix having simul streams. When you use one, you could actually use one of those streams and stream not to your Facebook account or your YouTube account. You could actually help out another church a Sunday where that church knows that the pastor is on vacation or something. Maybe it's a midweek service. You could stream to them. And so that's what we kind of worked out, in terms of staffing at St. Mark to bridge. But yeah, it's, if you can imagine a scenario in staffing, you can do it. you know. One thing I will say though, because my husband just walked past the door and then held up a note. It said, make sure you tell them that if you have folks that are of high school age, you will get cancellations the night before. Because that's just how it works. I've got lacrosse, like lacrosse is big in Summers and East Longmeadow. You know, I've got whatever, you know, and so I often see Graham, you know, Saturday at 1 p.m., you know, text messaging Brian or whoever, you know, so just be aware of that.
Yeah, I would add to that, 3 of our 4 volunteers are over 50. So just to counteract the stereotypes that you need young people to be able to do this.
Right.
You know, if people are curious and open and willing to make a couple mistakes, they're the perfect person.
That's right. And in fact, we got to that end at St. Mark's. Claire was a person that always came up. It was a member of our church. Always took these beautiful pictures with her SLR, right? You know, a camera, and just like beautiful. Not you think these photographs. She's a birder, you know. So you think the photographs are photoshopped, and they're not. You know, and of course, you know, she'd bring her camera to church, and a bunch of us were like, wait a minute, like, why aren't we asking Claire to run a camera? You know? So and we did, and so she's part of the staff.
Well, that's what I did at my church. Took pictures of all the programs and things that were happening. And so I am one of the, video guys at the church. The other video guy we have, unfortunately, or photographer, he sings on the choir. So he can't sing and assist back in the control room as well. But I'm glad you mentioned what you did about your association, because we may be able to get some economies of scale by doing the same thing. As part of the Southern Conference of the UCC, there are 3 associations. Our church is in the Western North Carolina Association, which I serve on the board there. So it's a good idea to see if we can't agree on some things, and like I said, maybe get some economies of scale and get some discounts maybe from companies that would offer that type service. But for those folks that are in the North Carolina area, I've been pretty satisfied with a company called Clarity. They're able to do the whole integration, audio, video, the whole thing. And they came back to train us, and they also came to our first service. So they were there doing the actual church service, assisting us. And then they came and helped us as we were preparing for a funeral. We hadn't been back in church yet, but we were supposed to go back to next week. And then Omicron happened and we weren't able to go back. But it would be good to have, a gathering of folks to say, hey, use this equipment. Hey, contact this company or that company. That would really be helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, Kenneth. I want to be mindful of time. I appreciate your time. And so I'd like to open up to questions for us on the panel. I know there's been a flurry of activity. I will digress and admit that I did not read all of them, but I want to acknowledge them. So I think what I will do is to work backwards. So Brooke has a comment. I think we need creative ways to welcome and convince folks watching at home to come back into Sanctuary. Thank you for that. Let's see. Jennifer replies, yes, Janine.
No, I say someone had asked about, are there grants available for, assistance with audiovisual or technology? And I meant to reach out to the Reverend Dr. Aaron Weed. Yeah, we've been keeping in touch. I don't know on the national side. I would start with the conference minister first. But a lot of times there are there's local assistance, or I know that there used to be maybe more during the meat of the pandemic, but so I would reach out to your conference minister first, and then I can send something out. I could reach out to Aaron Wade and see if there's anything. They change it all the time. I think as the funds become available, they kind of do different things, but they would send that information to your conference ministers first, probably to the, to the conferences. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can say that in the Southern New England Conference, we have our Tech Deacons Control Room Facebook group that's available as a resource. I'll put the link shortly in the chat so folks can see it there. And we are only too happy to help people with questions, ideas, thoughts, things that they need along the way. I do want to comment on Brooke's comment too, just to be careful about creative ways to lure, welcome, and convince people to come back in person that are watching digitally. Your digital ministry is as equally important as your people in person. If what I'm seeing is a trend, it's a little scary. People are thinking butts in seats means money in pockets, and people watching digitally are not giving. We need to figure out better ways to get digital stewardship to kick in gear. So those that are watching us, those that are viewing us digitally, are equally as supportive of our ministries as those that are there in person. When we get to that balance, we're going to feel much better.
Can I add
Exactly.
one comment
And,
to that, Kevin? As we see a lot of church financials, obviously, and we saw, there were obviously a lot of PPP loans in 2020 and 2021, but we also did see an increase in pledging across the board. I guess my question, kind of to piggyback on what you were saying, is anyone starting to see a drop off? I know it's early in 2022. I know pledging is typically a little slower in January, but just curious. I hear a lot of people shaking their heads no, that you're still seeing that strong pledging.
Pledging at St. Mark's is consistent, and there's a lot around that. We are getting a priest in charge. We're in an interim time, or a designated term pastor. So there's some something to that. The pledging at my husband's church has actually increased a bit over pandemic, because it was at that point he did switch to a digital online platform, and that's when the pledging went up.
Yeah, we've been able to maintain and exceed a little bit the giving when we went to we use Text to Give, a platform called Text to Give, and that's worked out well. It really worked out well, because even people that maybe came a couple of times a month, it's easier for them to give 3 or 4 times a month than actually be there in person. So that's been great for us.
Our giving has remained pretty stable as well, and has actually increased over the last couple of years every year. There's also a question in the Q&A spot from Jacqueline that I can address. Jacqueline had asked, how are you doing breakout rooms at the end of your service without going into a new Zoom link? And so in Zoom, there's a feature called breakout rooms that we were using for a while when everyone was on Zoom. And afterwards, we would click that button to do breakout rooms, and then you can assign people automatically, or you can manually do however many rooms you'd like to do. So based on the size of your church and how many people you want in a room, you can split people up that way. Now at this point, not enough people really stick around for that part. So we just let the same meeting keep running, and people can stay on if they'd like to. And that's actually how we've done all of our congregational meetings over the last few years, just by staying on the same Zoom call and inviting people who are on Facebook to come over and join us that way. So there's, I'm sure if that didn't make sense, you can Google breakout rooms in Zoom, and there's lots and lots of good resources for you. It's very easy.
There's also another alternative platform to Zoom. And that is Altar Live. That's ALTAR Live. I'll put that in the chat. It is what they've done is it's a company based out of Boston that takes all the good things about Zoom and kind of amplifies them, and takes all the things that are not so good about Zoom, like audio quality, video quality, echo, that all that nonsense, and offers a better package. When you first come into an altar live and somebody clicks on you, like go, enter our worship space on a Sunday morning, they click a link, they're taken to a parish hall where they can sit with their friends at a table of their choosing. Once the worship goes live at your designated time, either 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30, whenever that is, their table turns into a row, and you get the same sort of block of folks, a strip down the side of the screen as you would on Zoom. The screen then goes to the worship service full screen, and the comments section also appears. What's neat about it is that at the end of the service, either the pastor or the tech crew can then take everybody back to the parish hall, where you can sit at the same table. You could also watch anonymously, and the platform actually integrates with the text to give and whatever giving platform that you happen to be using. So it's kind of cool. They have some changes coming up, and if you're interested, I can send you those changes when those changes are rolled out.
So I'm going to jump in here and kind of trying to be very respectful of everyone's time. And so two things I would say, from the Cornerstone Fund, once there was something in there about, about grants. Again, we don't provide grants, we're a lender. We have a lot of different types of programs and resources available to you if you want to reach out to us, or, we can assist you in kind of figuring out what's the best fit for you. We will also be sending out a survey in terms of the webinar. And so if there's other things that you're interested in learning about, whether it's relative to, technology or other things, please let us know. Again, throw some other questions in the chat if you feel like there's something that we've missed, and we will make sure that you get an answer, or just reach out to us at info@cornerstonefund.org, and we can do that as well. Lots of different ways to contact us, even going through our website. I really want to thank the panel so much for your time. I really appreciate the time that you've given us, the thought that you've all put into it, and really, I think you could probably do a couple of webinars just on this technology, and you start to see all the excitement in the chat room, which is just kind of fun to watch, where people are really like, what about this microphone? So I think it's super helpful to share your experience, because I think everybody's at a different place with a different situation. And any closing comments from anybody before we power down?
The Southern New England Conference has a resource page for digital ministry, which the address I put in the chat.
I also put a note in the chat. All of us could use a pickup at some point, and we hit our low points or our stress points. Search Church Media Manifesto on YouTube, and you will find about a 4-minute video from a group called Black Bar, a great resource, by the way. That 4 minutes will be 4 minutes of the best time you have ever spent picking yourself back up and realizing it's okay. You are doing brilliantly right where you are right now.
Exactly.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, we are so thankful for all of y'all. So thankful. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Really do appreciate it, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.